time we got up there a couple minutes later, they had giant piles of bottled water in the lobby, and they had these big tanks in the parking lot that you could scoop a bucket up from, I guess, go flush your toilet.
I guess.
Wonder what in the world caused that?
I never heard of the cause, but about halfway up, halfway up to where the water's working, the other half it wasn't. And that made for some interesting, I mean, they brought in a lot of porta potties.
Oh, yeah.
And they did, and it was crowded. They didn't keep the crowd away.
How long ago gone? How long ago gone?
For 12 days.
Oh, wow.
We did North Cascades and then Olympic and then back out.
Is it a direct flight or do you have to go to Dallas or somewhere?
We got a direct flight both ways.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's about 4.5 hours.
That's not bad.
Couple of movies, man.
That's right.
Can't sleep someplace.
And it's hard. Oh, not enough room.
No.
It's called, used to be called 100 Acres. Oh. Where did that?
Were you here last week for Cliff?
I wasn't.
He said not too much participation.
No, fine.
I know you did a good job, but I
Oh, yeah.
wondered if there were any questions. But we'll see if we can get something stirred up tonight. Have enough elders here, I can pick on them.
There you go.
My phone quit about halfway through the trip.
Well, that's why you never, we had that text message again. It wasn't like you not to respond. I thought that seemed odd.
We were at Port Angeles, and Donna looked down and got 5 bars of 5G, and I said, I got SOS. But everything else was working on the phone except for the cellular. So I got on the phone with customer support and stayed there for about an hour and a half. And they had me take out the SIM card and they installed eSIM, which the newer phones use. It lasted a day. And every other call after that didn't do any good. Finally, they said, we've assigned the team to study your situation, they'll call you. It happened. So I got a new one, a newer one. Not the brand new, I got a 15.
Yeah. What was yours before?
13.
Wasn't that old, really?
No,
I can't remember what, I don't know. I just said I never have to get a number. Mine's about 14.
yeah. 13, 14, 15, I think are all the same. My 13 case fits this 15.
Oh, that's good.
So, that's where about that. But it's a hassle. You can't make phone calls. You don't use your phone where
Hey,
you're.
Robert. Good.
Hey, Jeff, did anything get settled on the Dorothy Eskew funeral?
When I called Stephanie, she said they had already been talking to one of the girls,
Okay.
and so I said, well, I'll know more than I do, I'm just handing you secondhand information, so.
Good.
I saw their funeral, the visitation, I think is 1 to 2.
Well, I haven't seen any arrangements yet. Okay.
I think it just came out this afternoon.
Okay.
Andrew was reading it on the way here. Funeral at 3, and then burial in Brownsville immediately following.
Okay.
Is that Sunday?
Sunday.
Is the visitation here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
visitation's here and the funeral's here.
Mr. Johnny?
Did you work today?
Like a dog, like a Hebrew slave.
Oh, that's right. Today's truck day.
Except you were getting paid, right?
Well, yeah.
Like a Hebrew slave.
Had to find your own.
Had to go find my own straw.
Yeah.
That's right. You got that Egyptian haircut.
That's right.
dad's phrase was like a rented mule.
Yeah. There's a little, you're not, let's see, when do you work? Okay.
Or Monday and Saturday.
Truck didn't come to about 10:30.
David,
so there's a
Saturday,
little bit
you're in
later.
our group. I'm your group leader. That means they can tell you what to do.
Saturday?
I get the big ball.
Where y'all going?
You need some lessons in leadership.
City service, city service.
We'll watch
But
you.
where you going? What do you do?
We're taking the trailer at the Hope. Is that the one out, Highway 18?
Well, the Hope Center, I looked it up, is on Hollywood
Oh,
between North Parkway and Old Hickory.
okay.
I was at the trailers there.
They have one on 18 too? Okay. They have two different
Have
locations.
more than one location?
I think the one on 18 is.
The one on 18 is
That's
what we,
not church.
yeah,
Well, yeah.
we painted the kitchen there one time, on one on Highway 18, but I thought it was called Hope Center too.
I thought we'd just bring a spray gun and paint everything, floor, ceiling, carpet, everything.
Everything.
No taping, paint the window.
Just paint it all.
You want
I
to
said,
paint
where are we going?
And I'm okay.
You
wanted the course?
She said you were going. She said.
Kept
"Oh,
the fourth Thursday up for me.
Yeah, it's,
And then I'm out the next week. We both have to be that part of the day.
a lot worse than what it was. 4 weeks out. I'm real happy.
Oh, really?
I gotta sit down and think.
We don't get what we're shooting on
Do what?
special Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good. Most people that I hear have those.
I can't
I mean, my mother-in-law would be.
That's true.
Yeah.
2 weeks apart.
Pretty much everybody I've talked to said they wish they'd had it done a couple years earlier.
Yeah, that's pretty much true of a lot of knee surgeries and that sort of thing. Most people say, I wish I had it done. I very seldom about yourself say, I think I should have waited.
Right,
Probably needs to wait.
Well, good.
Oh, really?
Good evening, sir.
Philip, stop meeting like that, Charlie.
Well, I see you. That's a pretty good place to be, dude.
Yeah, it is. No, it is.
Not long ago, was in the restroom, and there's a half a dozen of them in there.
Well,
That's
yeah.
a different, that's a
Probably
different.
not the best place.
That's not the best place.
You mean hot cake? Not just a regular hot
Yeah,
cake?
Judy.
Hot cake. Abby has a hot take. A hot take, yeah. Not a hot cake. Not a hot cake. A hot take.
I graduate in December of 2022.
Yeah,
No, he does not.
that's what we say.
He does not.
It's like, I've got, like a controversial opinion. Oh, yeah, that was kind of what I would come up with. I couldn't think of how to.
Well, why didn't you just say controversial opinion? See,
We're gonna go ahead and start.
it's hot takes, though.
Glad to have all of you
We're trying
here.
to, we're trying to impart new wisdom upon you.
This is the first time I've been here in a few weeks. Glenn taught last week and Kelly Inouye the week before that. And I'm glad to be home. We were on vacation for a few days in September. We're studying through 1 Timothy. We're in 1 Timothy chapter 3 tonight, which deals with elders and deacons. You probably have heard a lot of sermons, a lot of classes on elders and deacons. So we'll try to pull out some new stuff. Hope that you all will participate. Let's begin with a prayer. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day you've given us and this wonderful weather. We're grateful for all the people who are here tonight. Pray that you'll bless those families who are struggling, like the Kaufman family, as they've gone through their loss of Benny and the Eskews and the loss of Dorothy, and just pray that you'll bless those families. Help us to have a good class tonight. Help us to be open-minded and have the book in front of us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, elders and deacons. Got elders here tonight. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got maybe I don't think we have any deacons. Deacons?
Jason is.
Yeah. New one, apparently. Still in the honeymoon phase. Okay, so any questions you have before we start? Anything that's always been on your mind about deacons and elders you want to ask before we get into what we generally call the qualifications for elders and deacons? I know it's jumping into the deep end of the pool to ask you to think this early in class, but, you know, have has happened. Anything? Okay, been thinking of your questions as we go along then. Let's start by reading this section. I meant to have that pulled up. Okay. This is a trustworthy saying. If someone aspires to be a church leader, he desires an honorable position. So a church leader must be a man whose life is above reproach. He must be faithful to his wife. He must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation. He must enjoy having guests in his home, and he must be able to teach. He must not be a heavy drinker or be violent. He must be gentle, not quarrelsome, and not love money. He must manage his own family well, having children who respect and obey him. For if a man cannot manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? A church leader must not be a new believer, because he might become proud, and the devil would cause him to fall. Also, people outside the church must speak well of him, so that he will not be disgraced and fall into the devil's trap. And that's where we shift from elders to deacons. We'll pick that one up in a minute. It's interesting. Paul uses this phrase, this is a trustworthy statement. He uses it 5 times in the letters to Timothy and Titus. It's this one, that is, if a man aspires to the office of an overseer, he desires a noble task. Now, I disagree with the translation in the New Living Translation that I was reading from. He desires an honorable position. It's not a position. The eldership is not a position. It is a task. It is a job. It is a work. And I think too many times in churches we've used it as a way of honoring someone, and it becomes more of a figurehead type position. And I don't believe that's what we had in mind. So this translation is a little better. If a man aspires to the office of an overseer, he desires a noble task. That is something that needs to be done. The second one is in chapter 1, verse 15. We looked at that 3 weeks ago. Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am foremost. Then chapter 4, verse 9, while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also the life to come. And then 2 Timothy 2, 11 through 13. If we have died with him, we also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. And then the last one, with being justified by his grace, we might become heirs according to the hope of eternal life. Each of those 5 phrases were prefaced either before or afterward by the words, this is a trustworthy saying or trustworthy statement. So it's believed that these became sort of some well-known phrases that were used in the church. And especially the one, number 4 there, it almost reads like a poem, like part of a song. So these were well-known phrases in the church of Paul he uses. And this one, for our purposes, says if a man aspires to the office of an overseer, he desires a noble task. And those of us who are elders know that when we look at adding new elders, one of the first things we look at, in fact, the first thing we look at is this person willing to serve? I mean, one of the major, if they're not willing to serve, you're not going to get very far. And I will say that there are some people serving as elders now, and there are some people who've been asked to be elders who have said, I don't want that job, not right now. And some of them later on will pick it up. Others have continued to, their name comes up, they'd make a good elder, but they don't want the job. And so there has to be that desire. We don't want to force the eldership onto anybody. So if someone desires to become an elder, he desires a noble task. If a man aspires, okay, guys, why would anybody want to be an elder?
Hey.
Let me tell you a little bit about being an elder, okay? We meet every Wednesday night after church over here in the room in the corner. We have prayer. We spend very little time, I'll get into this a little bit later, we spend very little time talking about nuts and bolts of the church. That's not our thing. We want to shepherd people. And so each week we have a family that we pray for. And we go through our shepherding groups. My shepherding group has a little over 20 families or individuals in it. And each week I will touch base. Tonight is Logan and Carson Lewis. Touch base with them, and then we'll be praying for them. And so, you know, there are meetings. There are, what else? I mean, we deal with some, we don't deal with a lot of, I think a lot of people grew up with this idea that the elders make decisions, and we don't. Every once in a while I get surprised by something that gets announced. That's kind of interesting, or I didn't know it was going to happen. And I'm fine with that, because the elders are not a board of directors. The elders are into relationships. If the elders were just people who made decisions, you wouldn't need very many. In fact, you wouldn't want very many, because then it just makes things more complicated. But if you really want to take care of people, you need a lot of elders in a large congregation. We have 14 now. We've had even more than that in the past. But we made, the elders before me, and the elders, I've been an elder for 10 years. This was in place before me. Have made a concerted effort to offload administrative detail to other people so that we can spend more time with shepherding. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But why would anybody want to be an elder? Okay, guys, you that are elders, you wanted to at one time. Maybe you don't want to anymore. It's hard to get off the merry-go-round. But why would you desire the office?
For me, I've always seen more of a responsibility that it's a mantle someone has to wear and be willing to wear. And, you know, I've been asked over the years to be an elder. And
Yeah, you were an elder at another church
yeah,
before this one, right?
I was, but it's one, you know, it's one of those tasks that it doesn't matter what the organization is, leadership has to rise and come to the forefront in some fashion if the organization is going to be successful. And, especially true in the Lord's Church. And I was asked, and I prayed that if it was not His will, that God would intervene and prevent it from happening. Chose not to. And you know, as far as I was willing to serve, but more from a responsibility standpoint, I did. It's just the way it came about for me.
I look at it more like, you know, like, we don't work to earn our salvation. We work because of our salvation.
Right.
And that's how I kind of viewed it. I mean, I've been saved, and He gave His life for me. And if I've got a skill set that I can use to serve Him, then I think I need to do that. It was one of the, you know, I mean, many of Johnny's reasons were very similar to mine too, but that's just kind of another aspect of it. I think because of the grace He showed me, and if that's something that I can do, I probably need to do it.
And you're one that you were in the eldership and you stepped down and then you came back.
Right.
So you have a different, you wanted it twice.
You knew what you're getting into.
So, yeah, you knew what you're getting yourself into, so you had no excuse. I think there is a lot of that idea that there's a need for leadership. The congregation recognizes some of us as being capable of that. I think you have to look at that real seriously. It's kind of like when Isaiah, when the Lord asked, who will go for us? Who can we send? And He says, here am I, send me. You know, it's that willingness to take over a position. Not a position. We're not going to talk about a position. It's not a position. It's a job. So I think that's part of it, is if the congregation thinks you're capable, you can chime in too, you're one of the newest elders, Mr. Simon. I think that you have a responsibility to look seriously at it. Now, not everybody who looks seriously at being an elder decides to become one, and that's okay too.
You know, speaking from my point of view, I had been approached before, and I'd always said I don't desire that role. And this time it went a little different. Peggy Weaver came up to me the day they announced it and said, it's time, you know, you need to at least consider this. So talked to my brother who's an elder, and he said he didn't want to be, but yet he was so happy he had made that decision. And then my younger son, Luke's father-in-law, also is an elder, and he said the same thing. He said he didn't want to be. And, you know, one of the things is I do not relish getting up in front of the church and doing the shepherd's prayer, doing the announcements. I get emotional, and when somebody comes forward that, you know, you may not know what I said when it's all said and done if I have to be the one speaking. So I don't get excited about that, but it has been a real blessing, I think, to Andrea and I, just getting to know people a little bit better, my shepherding group, getting to know children's names, so it's been a blessing, even though I kind of had blocked it for a few years. So I think if you're in my place and down the road, you get, you know, you want to at least think about it, because it's a benefit. I've seen the benefit to myself and to my wife. And I think it would benefit anybody to consider that.
I don't think we talk about it very much, but there's a camaraderie among the elders. There's a brotherhood there that it's really there. I mean, we do have a special concern for one another. We look out for one another. You know, Mark Kaufman's dad died. All of us, in one way or another, we respond to that. I think there's that aspect of it too.
I will say, David, that when I first became an elder, looking back on it, I was too young. I was just like 40 or 41, and had young children, relatively young children. And there's just a lot of wisdom that comes just with years. And of course, I thought I knew a lot then, you know, and I think I know less now than I did then. So I do think that, I mean, I was honored to be asked, but I probably should have said no, looking back on that, simply because of just age and responsibility and just experience, just the experience that you get with life. So I think there's value in some age.
Well, and that's something you can see now that you
Right.
maybe couldn't see
Right,
then.
exactly.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little later. You think there's a minimum age for an elder? Maybe we'll get to that. I would look suspiciously, though, at anybody who really, really wanted to be an elder. I think there has to be, well, I'm just going to say, there have been people in the church, not here, but other places, who just really, really wanted to be an elder, were never asked, and it became a problem for them, and they felt passed over, or whatever. I don't know, that if you really, really want to be an elder, maybe you really, really want to for the wrong reason. Maybe you look at it as a thing of power, position, honor. You want the honor. And I would really, you know, I have it as a question, but I would look suspiciously at anybody who really wanted to be an elder more than anything else. In fact, I think it's probably good. There's a little bit of reluctance. I mean, I respect Jeff for what he said about having turned it down a few times. It does. I think there is something to be said for that. And I think that you need to, it's just like anything, count the cost. Can you do, it's a family thing. My wife's here. It is a family commitment. And it's, she's going to be, you know, she and Andrea ride home we ride to church together, but she and Andrea ride home, and then I go home. But, you know, you have arrangements to make, because because you're gonna stay late, sometimes you have to come in 2 cars, that sort of thing, so it is a family thing. But I think a little bit of reluctance is probably a good thing. I don't think it represents a lack of desire to be reluctant. It's probably a recognition of, this may be something I want, it's just not now. Can't do it now. I know, speaking to Jeff, he's a friend, that retirement probably had something to do with you accepting this time. You had more time, would you say?
Peggy Weaver really just kind of blew me away with, you gotta at least think about it, don't just say no immediately, kind of concept. But yeah, I mean, being retired, I definitely think I have more time, even though it doesn't show up, but, that probably played a role.
Okay, so to Kelly's point a minute ago, is 41 too young? Is there a minimum age to being an elder? How do you go about, I mean, I think Adam Brower would be a great elder someday, but how old are you?
Personal question.
Okay, I say you're both,
45.
okay. Is there a minimum age? It's young, it's older than when Kelly became an elder.
But my wife said I've always been 50, so
You were old.
So
when you
even
were young.
41, so I'm kind of an aberration, I guess.
I would say your kids need to be in high school or close to out of high school. It's just the time commitments with kids today is tremendous. And, but it was back, I was an elder, I was 42. And I look back on it and I think, that was too soon. I mean, we would meet, we met every week, and we talked about light bulbs, and we were like most other elders, and a good group of men, and we talked about flock as well, and what was going on, but we would meet for hours and hours and hours and hours.
I sat in, this is one of my ultimate examples, I sat in an elders meeting for a church I worked with early out of college. I was a youth minister, et cetera, minister, whatever. And it was an elders and deacons meeting, and they spent an hour I timed it, debating whether the concrete patch on the driveway should be 4 or 6 inches. So that was my introduction to, we don't need to be talking about this. Find a deacon, get this taken care of. But yeah, I think there is, I think it has to be, the Bible doesn't give us, it just says not a new Christian. Okay, so if you became a Christian when you were a teenager, as I suspect you might have, by age 41 maybe, you were not a novice any longer. So I think it becomes then the wisdom of the current eldership looking at somebody. I didn't mean to put Adam on the spot. Did I put you on the spot? I think you will be one day. I think I have my eye on you. You will be an elder someday. I think the wisdom of the current elders and the wisdom, if a man is really qualified to be an elder and it's not the right time, he'll know. He'll know. So, all right. Let's dig in a little deeper then. There are 3 main words that describe the function of an elder. Now, some will list this differently, but I'm just going from the 3 words that we translate as elder or overseer or bishop or shepherd, and these 3 words are a little different, all right? And some of them are familiar with, and some are maybe not. But presbyteros is, the word Presbyterian comes from that. It was basically, they're called Presbyterian because they were organized a certain way. But the word presbyteros is a word, it means elder, but it has the idea of leadership, of maturity and wisdom, dignity and authority within a community. So usually it would be an older person. There was a lot of respect for older people in the time that we're talking about. Before Christ, right after, a few hundred years after him, there's a real respect for older people. And so this is part of it. But I equate this word with the idea of leadership. And leadership is one of those things that's, it's really hard. It's hard for elders to get a hold on, because basically it means, let's all get together and go this direction. Let's set a vision. I mean, it's very easy for an eldership to become, keep the doors open kind of eldership. Deal with the current problem, deal with this as it comes up, but it's very hard to be forward-looking and have a vision for the future, right? Somebody nod. It is difficult, but that's what I equate with presbyteros, having the wisdom to know which way the church should be going and chart that course. The middle word there, poimen, translates to shepherd in a lot of places, and one of those is Acts 20, verse 28, 1 Peter 5:2, guiding, caring, feeding the church community. The word pastor is derived from this term. Pastoral has to do with shepherding, taking care of people. And so this job of an elder has to do with the care that we have for people, looking out for the Kaufmans when they have a death in the family, the Eskeys when they have a death in the family, or illness, or maybe it's a financial problem, or a relational difficulty, or a mental health issue. Well, we're looking out for the people in the congregation. And the way we do that is through shepherding groups, dividing up into the congregation into more manageable chunks, so I don't have to look over everybody. I can keep track of my group, and Jeff keeps track of his. But there's that idea of shepherding. The third term is episkopos, which is the term in our section, in our passage tonight, 1 Timothy 3, means overseer or bishop, and it highlights the idea of supervision, watchfulness over the flock, to describe someone who provides spiritual leader to protect the church from false teachers. And this, I think of this as being the administrator function, all right? I think we understand that one real good. In a smaller church, let's say 200 members or less, generally what you'll have is 2 or 3 elders. If you have elders at all, you have 2 or 3, maybe a deacon or 2, and a preacher, right? This is speaking just stereotypically. And that works pretty well. You can keep the 3 functions balanced pretty well in a small congregation, because you've got, the leadership, you can handle that, and the administrative detail and the shepherding. What happens though, the church will grow, and as it grows, the whole system changes. Because one of the things that grows first when the church gets bigger is the administrative detail. And because of the way elders are generally selected, they're people who've been successful in business, or they generally understand administration. These are people we tend to seek out as elders. When the administrative detail goes up, they're drawn toward it. And so what happens as the church goes from 200 to 400 or to 600 is that the shepherds really don't shepherd that much anymore. They're really drawn to administrative detail. And then maybe they're not even functioning much as leaders. We tend to, when everything's a hammer, when you're good with a hammer, everything's a nail. And I think that sometimes in our elderships, we've had that situation happen. So then we're going to get into what do we do about that. And what we've done about that is to offload administrative details to other people. And I think that that's the only way to keep things balanced. And I do think it's a balance in the eldership between the 3 jobs. I don't think that we elders can ever get rid of administrative detail totally. And they definitely need to stay in the leadership function. A lot of times churches will let the preacher handle the leadership, and they'll just follow him wherever he goes. I don't think that's as healthy as it can be. But I think the main point I want to get across is that as the church grows, you've got to find somebody to handle the administrative detail, or else it will just eat up the eldership. And you'll be in what some were talking about, dealing with light bulbs and carpet colors and things like that in an elders meeting. So
Do you think it's a good, and I've known of congregations this way, where the preacher is one of them. Do you think it's a healthy thing?
Preachers are what?
Or an elder?
I've seen it work really well, and I have seen it work not well. I think it depends on the people. Campbell Street, for 40 or 50 years, has had the idea that preacher doesn't need to be an elder. But I will tell you, Danny is very involved with the eldership here, and he's our right arm in a lot of ways. Because it's through him that we handle a lot of that administrative detail, the stuff that we feel like other people can handle, right? So, I don't know. I don't think there's any reason for a preacher not to be an elder from a scriptural standpoint. I think it has to be determined on a church-by-church basis. There is a tendency for a preacher to feel like if he's an elder that he's sort of untouchable, that he has his position sewn up, and he still need to be accountable, and that might be a little difficult. How do you have an elders meeting to talk about firing the preacher if the preacher's an elder? So, I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of wisdom. Do you understand the idea about the three types of jobs for an elder, and how it's important to keep those in balance? These are the qualifications of an elder, all right? It's a conglomeration or a combination of 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. I think these are all things that we've talked about probably before. Timothy, this one, believing children, that's in Titus. It's not in this passage. So I always thought was kind of interesting. It's in, why would be in one and not the other? Maybe things in the church where Titus worked was a little different than where Timothy worked in Ephesus. I believe, if I remember right, Titus was on Crete, and so maybe those people were a little different. But we don't have time to dig deeply into all of these, so I would wonder if any of them are of special interest to you to talk about, or something you've always had a question about. We'll look at a few of them, but is there anything that stands out that you'd like to talk about first?
The believing children. Because we was part of a congregation one time, and they asked a man to step down from being an elder because his grown children, which were in their 40s, were attending a different church. But once they leave your home, you can't control them. So do you think believing children is for life?
That's a tough one. And some of us in the current eldership have some issues in that regard, but I do believe that your main responsibility over your children are while they're in your house.
That's the way I feel.
And we can't always control the influences that work on them after they leave our home. So I think it's different. If you had a child grow up in your home, never becomes a Christian, and doesn't do anything with the youth group or anything, I think that's different than one who's very active, but later on in life, maybe chooses a different path. Anybody have a different view on that? I think that's one of those we kind of beat up elders about, and probably disqualify some people that we might not be disqualified on that particular point. That's my opinion.
Well, I think once they leave home, they establish their own home.
Yeah.
And you're no longer responsible.
Yeah. I don't know if our culture and their culture was the same, because in a lot of that culture, you were still a young person until you reached 40, and your parents had a lot of influence over you. So maybe we may be dealing with two different cultures. I'm sure we are, but I think generally we would look at what was that kid like when he was at home. We sort of beat ourselves up over the phrase in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old he won't depart from it. And so if he does depart from it, then something went wrong when he was a kid. I don't subscribe to that. I think it's just a general rule universally applicable.
How about a widower?
Okay.
I mean, I know of an example, my son-in-law's grandfather served as an elder for a long time, and the minute his wife died, he felt he needed to step away, you know, because of the husband and one wife thing. So, you know, obviously, people feel, I mean, I don't think it's worth arguing over, but it's an interesting thought.
Well, it's an interesting phrase. The literal in the Greek in this passage is a one-woman man.
Right.
And the emphasis in the phrase is on the word one. I don't know, for a long time I thought it was to combat polygamy, that they didn't think a polygamist needed to be an elder. I think there's a little more depth to it than that. I think this is talking about a man who, he is married, I think it's obvious, and his wife is the center of his attention, and he's not flirting with other women, he's not spending time with other women, he's not putting himself in a compromised position. I think that's the case. I think, you know, we had that happen here, you know, Terry Arnold and his wife died while he was still an elder.
I can't remember, maybe, I don't remember.
I think he stayed an elder for a while, and then maybe health reasons he stepped down. I think it's, you know, I don't think a widower is precluded. Donna's father was in that position. Was he an elder when your mother died? And he stepped down. He did not. I think we may have interpreted that one a little too tightly. And we've moved some people out of the eldership who probably could have stayed.
Going back to the believing children, and I'm not saying this is my viewpoint, but if their child does stray, I have seen where maybe their viewpoints on certain scriptures become a little more loose because they don't want to condemn their child's actions. So maybe now, okay, maybe it was, they look at a scripture a different way because they're not ready for their child to also be straying. So now we've changed our viewpoint on certain scriptures when their job is to make sure that the church is headed in the right direction. That is, and I'm not saying if your child's not believing, you've got to stop being an elder, but I do think that is something that could and has happened where they become a little more liberal or a little more loose with their interpretations of the scripture. So they don't have to condemn
I
their
can see
child.
that happening. Yep. I guess it's something we need to guard against, but I can see it happening. Anything else that jumps out at you up there? Not greedy for money? That comes up in both places, I believe. One guy said, hey, greedy, that's just a good businessman. Let's make that man an elder. You know, but the love of money, the pursuit of money can become all-consuming. And there's some really good businessmen who've been made an elder and it's been disastrous. So I think it's wise that it's there.
You know, it's not, I think it's broader than money. I think it has to do with our perspectives on material, where we find our deepest joys and, you know, what holds the center of our attention. And so I think it's as much a material issue as it is a dollar and cents issue.
Well, and there's some, I mean, we're talking about other churches a lot, but there are some churches, I believe, that choose their elders from successful businessmen. Like, I'm sure that people on the board of Free Hardeman tend to be people of means. That's just the way it is. You went on the board of a nonprofit, you probably have some money. So sometimes that attitude has come over into the church as well, you know, make this guy an elder, maybe he'll give more.
That's why we asked Jeff.
Yeah. say this about the qualifications. I have another slide up here, I don't know if I'll have time to get to. They talk about the qualities of an elder. And, this is something that we put out in our printed material the last few times that we have selected elders. Because the qualifications of an elder are just the beginning. I will tell you a story about a guy who was an elder in Knoxville, the church that I work with. I was calling Bob. Bob was an excellent deacon. He was over benevolence. And he had a heart for that, and he did a great job. Bob's name was put up for being an elder. When you look down the qualifications of an elder, there was nothing that disqualified him. He was the husband of one wife. He had believing children. He had he ticked all the boxes. The one that he didn't tick was leadership ability. He had, bless his heart, he had none. He was in business. They talk about the Peter principle, being promoted to the level of your competence, and that's what happened to Bob. The elders of this church, there were 5 of them at the time, but Bob was an elder, and they would rotate month about as to who was leading the meetings, basically. Elder in charge, whatever you call it. And when Bob was in charge, he would start the meeting by saying, okay, what do we need to talk about? And those are the last words he would say for the entire meeting. And if he wasn't the elder in charge, he wouldn't say anything for the entire meeting. I just don't think he had the confidence to get in there. After we left, moved here, he became a deacon again, if I remember right, and went back to handling benevolence, which he was excellent at. So just because a man does not have, just because he ticks all the boxes for the qualifications, doesn't mean he has the qualities to be an elder. And there are some things, I guess we look at that slide. I think there's things you have to look at that are beyond the qualifications. Is he a man of prayer, studying the Bible? Does he have the ability to lead? Can he manage things, care for people, give account to God for the church, living an exemplary life? A lot of these things are wrapped up in the qualifications, but, there's nothing in the qualifications about shepherding the flock. I think that's pretty important. And so we have been chosen to include these just as a way of saying what we're looking for in an elder at this congregation goes beyond just the qualifications. Does that make sense? We're looking for certain qualities in that person that they have the ability to lead. They have the ability to get in front of people. Now, not everybody's real comfortable standing up in front of the auditorium and all that. Not all of us have to. Not all of the elders are comfortable teaching, for example. I'm very comfortable, maybe too comfortable teaching. I kind of think it's my gift. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's my curse. But I don't think the elders have to function in exactly the same way. I think it is very reasonable for the elders to work in areas where they're more gifted. In our current eldership, there are 5 of us who handle the administrative detail, the part that doesn't get handled by deacons and Danny and the ministry staff. And there are 5 of us that have a pretty good ability when it comes to administrative. Kelly, me, David, Dave Klaus, Terry Myers, and Larry Reed. And among the elders, it's our way of taking that off of them, the rest of them. And so sometimes there's just things that come up, and the 5 of us will discuss it and make a decision. And, we'll keep the others informed. But I don't think, I've used the illustration before, the eldership is not like 5 guys running down the road holding hands. And you can only go as fast as the slowest elder. So we don't all have to do the same thing. I think we each have talents and gifts and abilities. And that's the one thing that's not in the list. There's not a lot in there about giftedness. and what you're gifted to do. A lot of it is about character. And I think that I would much rather deal with a man with a proper character and that could learn the skills involved in being an elder. Okay. We're not gonna get to deacons. Thought we might. Let's try this one. Which of the qualifications for being an elder would you personally find to be the most difficult for you? If you're a current elder, you can answer. Or just in general. What would you? Kelly has that problem with that wine one, so I know that for a fact.
That's the husband and one wife thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Don't tell Teresa that.
I told him he's lucky to find one that would put up with it.
I want to be more hospitable than I am. I think it's harder sometimes to show hospitality, but we do that. Is there one that you think would be especially hard for you?
I'm more of an introvert. I had to force myself at times to be what comes natural to most, I guess, most elders, that sort of thing. So just the relational side, of course, at this stage of my life, here it comes into play big time. But that's my present excuse. Historical excuse was I am a bit of an introvert. So that I think that's not a good thing.
Well, it's the introverts that make the best students of the word, really. I think there's certain qualities of introversion that are a real asset in an eldership. And I should say this, it works because of the diversity of the group. The eldership works because we're not all the same. I've said it before in this class, and I'll say it again, that the smartest person in the room is the group. And if you can't accept that, then you don't need to be an elder. If you really think you're the smartest person in the room, it's not going to work. But there are times when my own personal viewpoint is not the viewpoint of the group, but I trust the group more than I trust myself. And so you have to have that humility to be able to do that. And if it's, and we're very clear about this, if the group decides to do something and it just violates your conscience, you can't handle it, then you will quietly resign. We all have that agreement. If you care about your children, go get them. Yes?
I've just been formulating a question that it's related to the whole thing, not
Well,
specifically.
you're gonna have to clean
about-
up my mess next week.
Yeah, right. No, it's, my question is that as we view all this about eldership, it seems to me a real important question for the church to say and to ask, why do we need elders? For example, I know sometimes we've talked about eldership, well, especially going in a new church plant, you get started, well, we want you to get a certain number of people, we want you to have a building, we want you to do that, we want you to appoint elders, and that's all a part of the church growth. And that doesn't nullify that. It just means, why do we need elders to begin with? And I think generally it's because the flock has a tendency to get distracted, to get scattered, to get taken over by other things. And there's just something about this image of the shepherd standing there with his staff, and he says, whoa, wait a minute, we need to stop here, and we need to take into consideration certain things. I know in Latin America, it's a little different culture, but anybody that's considered a leadership position, obviously it takes power. And to see somebody that exercises as a shepherd who takes care of instead of taking power just helps define that a little bit more. It's a really difficult concept to get across. But again, I just think that as a church, we need, well, why do we need elders? Not just so, because it says so, you know, and it gets back maybe to Paul's speech to the elders at Ephesus there, that lead us in Acts 20. Feed the flock of God, take care of the flock. But anyway, just that little different way to ask and to deal with some of the same things. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And why do we need elders? I think that, well, I'll turn around with you. Why do we need elders? We're about done. We're over time. Yeah.
I think it's just a blessing to the congregation to have a group of men who are pointing us to true north. And that gives it some peace. There's a group of people who are watching for us to make sure we're going the right way.
Well, I'll close with this. I think it applies to what you all are saying, and then I'll let you go. The concept of a shepherd has changed over the years. In ancient times, a shepherd lived with the sheep, was intimately connected with the sheep. He went with the sheep, slept with the sheep. And nowadays, according to the illustration that was shared with me, we have three guys in a pickup truck, and they go behind the flock, and they have the dogs. So we have this dog, he's keeping these sheep over, and this dog over here. So we got the pulpit minister dog, and then we got the youth minister dog, we got the whatever dog. And that's the way we manage the sheep. And I think a lot of churches have turned over the eldership responsibilities to staff to the point that they do become like a board of directors. I don't think we can ever lose the fact that we are primarily shepherds. Shepherds who happen to have some administrative and leadership abilities, but I think our primary job has always got to be shepherding. And Glenn, you're going to have to clean it up next week.
Okay, we'll do our best.
All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your participation.
Next week is Deacon Week.
Hey, Nathan.
I've seen you here several times, I haven't met you. I'm Jeff. Abby?
Do I know? I'm sorry. We just finished class. So,
Yay.
My wife's brother, number 6.
She knows. Abby knows about Brenda number 6.
no, not at this point.
Brenda number 6 named Andrea.
Oh, yeah, I do know.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. All right, let me come down.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Was it hip or knee?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got 2.
Not the Noah Apostle card.
Good, good.
She said that we have no apostles, and so we need elders instead.
But not the
Hot take.
Not the big.
No, they don't equate. Well, I think there were some real hot takes going on here. Well, we were having our own hot takes to ourselves.
Are you supposed to talk about that?
We were talking about the Bible.
Okay.
We were talking about the Bible.
I don't feel confident enough.
She doesn't, she won't speak.
That's not true. I don't feel
You won't.
That is not true. I talk all the time. I don't feel confident enough.
You won't speak in the class.
That is not true.
Not often.
That is not true at all.
You won't often speak in
all
the
the time.
I'm saying you do speak.
We got a couple of.
We have a dispute. Oh, no,
They
sweetheart.
don't even know me.
I don't know.
I'm saying at least, like, especially at Adamsville. I talk every
At Adamsville, like 70% of the class is your
I
family.
talk here too. I talk here often.
Have you? I'm just gonna listen to you. I listen to every word.
I mean, we're
It's
just
because
gonna
normally when I say things, people just leave.
That's not true. I feel like I just talk so much that you don't talk with me. You do, just not as many as I do.
I don't want to make comments but
I love talking about my opinions. I think it's a great plan. I'm not passionate yet.
Hey,
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
tell me about your the girl that came with you, what's her name?
Semi,
Semi,
Kimmy, Sammy, whoever she is.
and the little boy.
Mason.
Sammy and Mason.
Simi.
Simi. You called her Sammy.
I call her Sammy.
that's her nickname.
We
How
like
do you
you.
spell Simi?
Cimi.
That's a new one.
Her mom met a girl like her cousin's friend or something like that from camp. This girl, like, they visited like once at her family's home and never saw this Simi person ever again and named her child after her.